Welcome to lesson 5. This is going to be a writer workshop, and we're going to work on thesis crafting and evidence integration. So we've analyzed the symbols, the tone, and the motifs, and so now it's time to turn your insights into strong analytical writing. So in literary analysis, your goal isn't to retell the story, but to argue an interpretation of it. Every paragraph should prove an idea about how or why Bradbury made specific choices. So think of this workshop as your toolkit. How to build a thesis, how to integrate textual evidence, and explain it through clear analytical language. So by the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to write a thesis that answers the question, so what? Instead of just simply describing events. You're also going to learn to choose evidence that supports your ideas directly, not just random quotes, but purposeful ones. And then finally, we're going to refine how to introduce and explain evidence so that it flows naturally and it sounds academic and it strengthens your argument. So a thesis is your essay's foundation. Like if we were building a building, the foundation is at the bottom. So the thesis is just the basis, the base of our essay's foundation. It's not a summary. It's not a statement of fact. It's a claim that somebody else could debate. So, for example, Bradbury's novel warns against censorship. That's a start, but it's a little bit too general. A stronger thesis is going to add focus and reasoning. So I might say, in Fahrenheit 451, Bradbury uses fire imagery to reveal how censorship destroys not just books, but humanity's ability to think and feel. And that's arguable, it's specific, and it's analytical, and it's opening the door for evidence and commentary. So in your handout, I want you to answer this question: which part of this thesis makes it analytical rather than factual? So let's compare here. We want to compare the weak versus the strong thesis. Weak ones tell us what happens. Strong ones tell us why it matters. The strong thesis moves from topic to insight. They're combining textual understanding with reasoning about theme or symbolism. So as you're crafting your own thesis, you can ask, could someone disagree with me? And then if that's yes, it's probably arguable and analytical. So let's look at this. A weak thesis might say Bradbury shows that fire is dangerous. That's factual, but it's not arguable. So a stronger thesis would say Bradbury uses the shifting symbol of fire to show that destruction can lead to self-awareness. And this explains how the meaning is changing. A weak thesis might be that Montague is the main character who changes. Well, that's obvious. A stronger thesis might be, through Montague's moral awakening, Bradbury reveals that true freedom begins with self-reflection. This is more focused, it's more interpretative. And then a weak thesis might be technology is bad. That is way too general. So I want to change it to say something like Bradbury critiques technology's power to numb emotion and replace human connection. And this is specific theme-driven claims. So now it's your turn. I want you to start with a basic structure, then layer in nuance. So an example would be like Bradbury uses fire as a symbol to show how destruction can cleanse ignorance. And then I want you to revise it for depth. So we might revise it and say Bradbury transforms fire from a symbol of destruction to one of enlightenment, suggesting that rebellion and knowledge are necessary for rebirth. Good writing is evolving through revision. And specificity is transforming a simple statement into literary insight. And once you have your thesis, you need textual support. The key rule is never just drop a quote. A quote should always arrive with context, like who's speaking, what's happening, why does it matter? Single phrases create smooth flow and credibility, so think of them as bridges that connect your own analysis with Bradbury's words. Strong evidence integration is going to help your writing sound polished and purposeful. So answer this question in your handout. Why is it important to use a single phrase before your evidence? So in literary writing, MLA format keeps our work credible. We always want to cite the author's name and page number in parentheses. We don't want to put any extra punctuations in there. No extra commas, no extra punctuations. But citations are only part of the process. You also have to explain why the quote matters. Never assume that the reader sees the connection. A good rule: for every one line of evidence, include at least 2 lines of your own analysis. Then after we quote, we want to avoid the trap of summary. This shows that Montague is sad. That's too surface level. Commentary is going to dig deeper. So I might say Bradbury's description of Montague's melting smile symbolizes the collapse of artificial happiness and the beginning of self-awareness. The difference here is depth. Commentary turns observation into interpretation, and that's really the true goal of literary analysis. So in your handout, I want you to write down how can you tell when a sentence is analysis rather than summary. And every analytical paragraph follows the CEA structure: claim, evidence, analysis. So the claim states your idea. The evidence is going to support it, and the analysis is explaining its significance. So notice how Bradbury's language is shifting from violent to gentle. The diction itself is showing Montague's moral growth. So when we're writing, we want to remember your voice or analysis must always be stronger than Bradbury's evidence. So the claim is going to be like you're going to make your point or your mini thesis. So an example here would be Bradbury transforms the symbol of fire from destruction to renewal. And the evidence here is we're going to support that with a quote. It was a pleasure to burn. Later, it was not burning, it was warming. And then we want to analyze. So explain how the evidence proves our point. The change in diction reflects Montague's transformation and humanity's potential for rebirth. So now it's your turn to put the model into action. Choose a symbol that we've studied and write one analytical paragraph using the CEA model. Focus on clarity and flow. Let your ideas lead the quote, not the other way around. And when you're done, reread and then ask, does my paragraph teach the reader something new about Bradbury's message? And if yes, you've succeeded. So 1 claim, 1 to 2 pieces of evidence, and 2 to 3 sentences of analysis, and make sure you're using proper citation and flow. And after writing, just take a few minutes to swap your work with a partner or your learning coach, and use this checklist to give some constructive feedback. And be specific. So you might say, add more explanation after the quote, or clarify your thesis. That's going to help more than just good job. Peer review is practice for real revision. It's helping you see how clearly your ideas come through to the reader. So to close, let's pull everything together here. Your thesis, your evidence, and your insight. Use this as your foundation for your final paragraph or essay. And remember that Bradbury's message, the power of thinking and reading and questioning, is what keeps a society alive. So you're going to write your thesis for a short literary analysis essay on Fahrenheit 451, and you want to include 1 piece of evidence and 1 to 2 sentences of commentary. And then you can add, how did this unit change how you view books or censorship or individuality?